Alright, this is a video on just using simple functions, so how to create functions and how to call them in your code. This video will not account for parameters in functions or things like that at this point. So what we're going to look at is just something very, very simple. Functions are supposed to make it so that we don't have to retype code over and over again, or maybe we can organize our code in different ways, and so we can actually read the code a little bit better and separate it out. And that's where our focus is going to be. So we're going to start with just, if I want to do something very basic, which might be, if we just call a function that's already pre-built in, which is function mouse clicked. Now what we want to say is if that mouse is clicked, we're going to draw a rectangle. And we'll draw that rectangle at the location of the mouse X and the mouse Y. And we'll make it a square, so let's say 30 by 30. So I guess truly not a rectangle, more of a square. So if I go on my screen, every time I click, nothing happens. Again, make sure this background is going to take this out. There we go. Now yours should be working as well. Okay. And I left that in there purposely. People forget about that background. That is, whenever you make a new program, it always throws it in there. Now, so far, how does that help me? Probably not too much, but there is a different way I could write this. And I could actually make a function that I'm going to call. So we're saying right now, we're telling the computer, hey, I want to make a function. And I'm going to call it drawRect. Now, we're going to leave this brackets empty because we want no parameters. We're not inputting anything into this function at this point. And inside of these curly brackets, you're going to put whatever you want to happen when we say drawRect. And so in my case, I actually want to say all of this writing here each time. So what I can do then is I can go back to this, my mouse clicked, and say, hey, whenever the mouse is clicked, I want you to run this function that I just made. And it's called drawRect. So it's going to be drawRect. And actually, that's it. So now if I go and refresh it, if I hit a mouse, I should see rectangles draw. Now you're going to say right now, hey, that doesn't really save me any time. But you could put a lot more shapes in here or have all sorts of things be in this. This is not limited to one line in this function. And they can become much, much more complicated when you start adding parameters. So a parameter like we have this create canvas has a width and a height to it. We can do all of that stuff as well. Now the benefit really of this is now let's say I do another function and use the key pressed function. So instead of having to rewrite rect mouse X mouse Y, all I have to type in is drawRect, and that's it. Now when I go to use my function, every time I press a key, it is actually calling this function. And again, much more useful if you had maybe 5 or 10 lines in here. So you're not having to code those lines over and over and over again. And this does work inside other functions like our draw as well. So I could say if maybe an argument would be like the mouse X is greater than 200. So that's about the halfway point. I could say I want you to run that function, or I want to call that function. And again, just type in your function's name. So drawRect. And then as soon as that mouse goes over 200, it should start drawing me that function. Now, if I put multiple pieces of code in here, again, it would do them each and every time. The one thing you do have to watch out for is when you're naming your functions, you have to make sure that those names haven't already been used by the program. So I can't use key pressed or mouse clicked. I might be able to put in key pressed 1, key pressed 2, but that maybe isn't the best naming way. So try to find something that does describe it that's not going to cause confusion when somebody else looks at this.